final session of the Musical Theater Workshop presented by the Princeton Festival as part of its Virtually Yours 2020 Festival. I am Stephen LaCosse, and today we're going to talk about rehearsals. Preparation. I know I've talked a lot about preparation in this series, but preparing for rehearsals is very similar to preparing for the audition and for your voice lessons and dance classes and acting classes. The first thing you have to do, especially in a musical, is try to arrive knowing your music already, but be prepared to make any changes that the music director might ask. Also, generally in musicals, but not all the time, you arrive knowing your part. That shows that you've done your homework and you're ready to receive whatever the director or music director or choreographer might present you in the rehearsal process. Remember, the rehearsal is the laboratory under which the production comes together. So we work it out in laboratory, we try things, we try this, we try that, and we put it together, and that's how we get the show. So don't think of the rehearsal as something I have to be absolutely locked into everything except for the right notes and the right lyrics and the right text. But be prepared to experiment and play with the things that you're going to be able to do during that rehearsal process. Sometimes it can be as short as a week, and sometimes as long as 6 weeks. But it's up to you to put yourself in the best light to be prepared for that process. Walking into that first rehearsal can be a bit daunting sometimes. The first thing you have to remember is you're walking in ready to work. So any of the problems that are happening outside in the real world have to be left outside that door. You cannot bring those into rehearsal. You have to be able to relax, you have to focus, you have to know what it is you're going to do in that moment. You make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the kind of rehearsal you're going to do. So, for instance, if your character is a businessman, you might bring a jacket to rehearsals because it's going to change your posture a bit. You want to really respect the rehearsal process in dressing appropriately for the character that you are working on. The best way to approach a rehearsal is an artistic adventure in which you're going to explore all the facets of your character and the story. Now, you come into that room and you have 4 basic things that you want to accomplish during the first rehearsal processes. You want to develop a bond of trust with your colleagues, with your director, your music director, your stage management. You want to feel like you can trust each other and you're in a safe space. You want to explore how deeply engaged you can get into your character's feelings without affecting your singing. So you want to take chances in rehearsal. You're not going to know how far you can go until you go that far, and sometimes you'll have to back off. But in going far to experience that emotional thing that the character is experiencing, you'll be able to bring that back in and incorporate that into your performance. You want to be able to begin to forge a physical presentation of that character, and your director and oftentimes your choreographer or movement person are going to help you with that. And you want to be able to now develop and integrate all those things at once into a believable character. In the preparation for the rehearsal, here are some questions you can ask yourself. First of all, have you read the entire script? And have you identified the big ideas or the big goals of the character? Have you read it with the feeling of how the character feels about those things? Have you listened to it if there's a recording? Now, you don't want to mimic somebody's performance, but it's a good idea just to get a feel for, especially the music, how the music goes, especially with the orchestra, because you're going to be rehearsing with the piano for quite a bit of time before you get with the orchestra. So listening to a recording can be a good guidepost as to how things go, give you an idea to tempo, etc. As you walk into that rehearsal room, and you are trying to develop those feelings of trust and establish how that's going to work, make sure you've done the following things. Make sure you know the piece thoroughly. Now, there are some directors, especially in plays, where they don't want people to come with any ideas. They want it all to happen organically in the rehearsal space. So find out where you're working to know how you're going to maneuver that. But generally, in a musical, the rehearsal time is so short that you really have to arrive knowing your stuff. Have you done all of your background work? Do you know where it's set? Do you know what your character might be wearing? Do you know how people move in that period? How do you find those things? Well, you can go back and you can look at pictures. You can look at pictures of productions if it's a musical that's been done before and see, okay, these are the kinds of things they did. You always want to have that information in your back pocket. The director may take it in a totally different way, but if you've done some of that research, it can inform how you play your character. Can you imagine how this piece was understood in its time? Because some pieces are pictures of time in society. So why today it may not seem relevant to you, 40 or 50 years ago, it may have been very relevant and maybe dealing with an issue that really isn't an issue now. So you have to put yourself in a frame of mind, that lets you know where it is that you're actually taking place this thing and did it make sense. And you have to really know what every word means. Now I hate to say this, but sometimes in scripts there are words that we know we can pronounce and we don't know what they say. Make sure if you don't know what a word means, there's this thing called dictionary.com. Look it up and make sure you know what it means. Make sure you know what it means. Also, if there is a historical reference or a lyric that makes reference to a person or a thing of a time, look it up so you know what it is you're referencing, because it may be a very funny thing, but if you don't know what's funny about it or what's serious about it, then you really haven't done your preparation. So if a name pops up of a Elsa Maxwell, for instance, many of you won't know who that is. Look up Elsa Maxwell, you'll know how she is, and then if somebody is singing or speaking about Elsa Maxwell, you'll know how to handle that. Some more thoughts about rehearsals. We always say on time is 10 minutes early. Don't be running in the door at the last minute. It's disrespectful to your colleagues, it's disrespectful to the director, the music director. Remember, they are trying to respect your time, and for every minute you're late, you are costing everybody else rehearsal time. So on time is 10 minutes early. On time is not right walking in at the stroke of the rehearsal time, and certainly not a minute after. On time is 10 minutes early. Are you coming in rested and ready to work? You know, again, you have to leave that outside world problems out there. I don't care if the traffic was horrible. Get there, be ready to work. Are you physically and vocally warmed up, or did you roll out of bed and walk into rehearsal? That's not how it works. You have to do all of that preparation before you come into the room. Now, the company may have a set of physical warm-ups that they do with you, and the music director may have some vocal warm-ups they do with you, but you really want to take care of yourself and not count on that happening at each and every rehearsal. Have you learned your music thoroughly? Do you know exactly what it is you have to sing? If it's in harmony or parts, do you know exactly what that is? You want to arrive knowing that from the beginning, because if you have that information up here, you're freer to act and create a character. If any part of your body is trying to remember how the melody goes or what the note is, then you're not free to really create and be spontaneous. If this is not the first rehearsal, have you reviewed the notes that were given to you at the end of the last rehearsal? And notes can be given either in a group session or emailed to you. Have you looked at the note? Have you understood it? If you haven't understood it, do you arrive early or email back and ask a question? If you blocked a scene and you wrote and you're not sure what the blocking is you wrote down, make sure you check with the stage manager before you do that scene. Saying I can't remember or we haven't done that for 2 days really doesn't go over well when you're having a lot of condensed rehearsal time. That's part of your work outside rehearsal, but that's part of your rehearsal process as well. Review what it is you need to know, and if you don't know or if you can't remember, ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. Which brings me to a really good saying and something that I have lived my life on. Amateurs remember, professionals write it down. Let me say that again. Amateurs remember, professionals write it down. Ama comes from the term to love, so if you love what you're doing, you can remember, and if you make a mistake, you're not pretending to be a professional. You're doing it for some other reason, and while you still should write it down, it's a little more forgivable. If you are a professional, you write down your notes, you write down your blocking. If you have a question, you write down what the question is. Always have a pencil and always be prepared to write something down. Again, we talked about coming into the rehearsal dressed as your character. Wear clothing that's going to help you be that character. It really does help. I know some people say that doesn't, but it really, even a gentleman wearing a jacket, really, you stand differently when you wear a jacket versus a t-shirt. So, have clothing there, and if you don't have it, maybe they have a rehearsal department or a costume department that can bring you a rehearsal costume. Don't be afraid to ask for those things. If they don't have it, then figure out something. You can go to a Goodwill store or a thrift store to buy a jacket that will help you, or whatever you might need. Okay? If you have to bring your own props, make sure you have them. Oftentimes they'll have props there, but you should have a list of the props that you need to have and make sure that they're there. So before you start a rehearsal, and you know your character comes in with a handbag or a backpack or a telephone, make sure that it's on the props table and it's located where you can get to it. If it's not there, don't come on stage and say, well, it wasn't there. Ask before you begin the scene. The stage manager, oh, it's on the other side, let me go get it for you. They can take care of it. It doesn't waste time in rehearsal then. If you need to have a prop, make sure you have it. Between the rehearsals, okay, practice anything that gave you trouble during the rehearsal outside rehearsal. You cannot do all of your rehearsing in the rehearsal time. You have to practice outside. So you take the things that challenged you and you work on those. It is our nature to sometimes avoid the things that are challenges to us and work on the things that we do well. But if you already do something well, you can review it, but you don't need to work on it. So, and are you constantly working on your interpretation of the character? So in rehearsal, a director might say, now I need you to go over there and pick up the phone and throw it at the other actor, okay? So you have to ask yourself, if he doesn't tell you why, you need to come up with a why. So anytime a director gives you a piece of information, why did he ask me to do that? Try to find that answer yourself rather than challenging the director at that moment. He or she may be looking for another response, but they're asking you questions and asking you to try things to see what works for you. You really don't want a director that's going to direct you like a puppet that says, do this at this time. A lot of good directors will ask you a question or have you try something and say, you know, what you did there was very interesting. Let's explore that together. Or, that really didn't work for you. What was your intention? And then you can relate what your intention was, and the two of you can come to an agreement about how that might work in the scope of the whole thing. Remember, the director is keeping an eye on the whole show. Let everyone do their job. Now, if you're like me, when I was young, I used to think I knew everything in rehearsal. So I could quickly remember things, I could quickly tell people what my colleagues what to do, the music director, the director. Bad mistake. I was called out a lot when I was young for doing that. And so learn from my mistake, please. You have your job to do. You take care of you. You don't tell a colleague how to act. You don't tell a colleague they're blocking unless they ask. They might say, can you remember what we did here? Then that's a welcome piece of instruction or criticism. But if it's not asked for, let the director take care of it. The director's job is to watch that. If they're not singing the right notes, that's not your job to correct them. That's the music director's job to correct them. If something isn't right for the stage management team, let the stage management handle it. You have enough to do with just doing your job. And if you're a good colleague and you do your job, then you're going to be welcome back to the rehearsal process every time. But if you're one of those colleagues that tells everybody what to do and is doing their job, that is very disrespectful. So don't ever presume to tell anybody how to do their job, but doing your job. Talking about your colleagues. We all talk about our colleagues, and we talk to each other about that, we talk to other people about them, but it's really not a good practice to do that in a place where somebody might hear about it. So, if you have a significant other and you're having a difficulty with a colleague, share that information privately. Do not share that publicly. Do not go on your social media, on your Instagram, your Facebook, and whatever, and post something derogatory about the rehearsal, or about the people in the rehearsal, or be chatting about people behind their backs, because people are always going to talk about you. Just know that they're always going to talk about you. And the thing that you want to make sure is that they're saying great things about you and not bad things about you. And you can control that by just keeping your mouth shut, have an opinion, fine, you can have that opinion, but do not share that in the wrong circumstance. And once it's out there, and you don't want to have that reputation of being that person that talks behind everybody else's back. Once again, it's a profession. You can only control your job and what you do. You cannot control how the other person feels. You may have somebody that your chemistry doesn't click and you're doing a scene together. How do you make that work? It is the director's job to find a way for that to work, unless the partner says to you, or you might say, would you like to get together outside rehearsal and work on this scene? But you never want to say, you're not doing that right, or you're messing me up by missing those lines. That is not a way to deal with a colleague. That is the director, the music director, the stage manager's job. So, you take care of yourself, because that's all you can take care of, and you let the other chips fall as they may. It's not going to be the first time that you're going to deal with somebody like that. Dealing with difficulties, okay? You and the conductor don't see eye to eye on something. How do you deal with that? Okay, well, you don't call them out and say, no, I'm not going to do that. You're going to try it, and in the efforts of trying it, they may see, okay, they can't do it that way. Let me try another way. Or you might come to an agreement, but you have that talk outside the rehearsal process, after rehearsal, in an email, in a private way. You don't call the leaders of the team out in front of the entire cast. Or because that just that makes you a bit of a diva, or a divo, if that matter. And that's not in the worst sense. A diva can be a very positive thing, but you don't want to really call somebody in charge out in the room. You want to have that conversation privately. Same thing with the director. If you and a director don't see eye to eye, remember, it is your job to do it the way they ask you to do it, or to try to do it the way they ask you to do it. That is your job. And even though you might totally disagree with it, if you keep getting the same note, then you must do it that way. Your goal should be to never get the same note more than once. And even if you don't agree with it, you have to find a way. So you go back and you say, okay, why do they say that? If they haven't given you a compelling reason, and come up with a reason for yourself to do that job. That's really all I can say about that. Is in rehearsal, it's your job to do your job. Now, there are certain things that you might want to, lay down the gauntlet and say, I'm not going to do that, but you have to be really careful when you choose to do that. Because if you do it too much, then you're going to get that reputation as an uncooperative actor or singer, and nobody's going to work with you again. Because remember, once you've worked someplace, everybody else works other places, and if they see it on your resume, they might call so-and-so who's with them now, hey, so-and-so sent me their resume to audition for the X show. I see you worked with them at X place. What were they like? And they might say, well, either they'll say, hopefully they won't say they were horrible to work with. They say, well, I really would prefer not to comment. And in that moment, you're sunk. Because if they're not going to say good things, they may not say bad things, but if they don't say, oh yeah, they were great, they were a great colleague, they'd be fun to have around, you'd love them. So you have to really make sure that you set yourself up for that. So if you just do your job and do what's asked of you, you'll have success. And every project is different, so not every project is going to be a dream job. Some of the jobs are going to be just that, jobs. And you're going to have to do your job to get rehired. When you get to a certain level, then as you begin to progress in this career, you'll see how to navigate that, and you'll gain the respect. And once you gain the respect from performances you've given or things you have done, then there's going to be more of a dialogue. But if you shut the dialogue off right away, then you become difficult to work with and people aren't interested. Final thoughts. So, if there's so much difficulty in all the preparation that you have to do for this, why do it? You do it because it's something that you have to do. It feeds your soul. And even though sometimes it can be frustrating, it can be maddening, as frustrating as maddening it can also be so rewarding and glorious. And you have to be patient with your talent. Because sometimes a talent is like a child, okay? And sometimes the child walks right hand in hand with you and you're in sync. Sometimes it's running behind you. You're ready to go here, but they're not quite ready. And sometimes it's running ahead of you and you're trying to catch up. But if you do all of these things that I talk about in the preparation, in the practice, you do all those things, that will get easier and you'll be more in sync than not. I want to thank you all for joining me in this series. Tomorrow you're going to have the opportunity to watch a live musical theater event from the Princeton Festival please do tune into that. Also, don't forget that you're going to have the opportunity, the first 25 people who submit links to videos for your audition, as well as your resume and headshot to education@princetonfestival.org. They will be forwarded to me, and I will give you an evaluation on what you do. There will be information here at the end. I'll put that on a slide like I did in the last presentation, so that you can actually see where to send that. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope I have many questions. And one thing I do want to apologize for at the very end of this is I realized, and today I didn't do it, but I was saying, okay, and now we're going to do this. So I wrote myself a note here, because I'm a professional, don't say okay all the time. So, that being said, I hope you are all okay, safe, and healthy. And thank you for joining us for this musical theater workshop presented by the Princeton Festival Virtually Yours 2020 Festival. Have a great day.